So Zach, whenever.
All right. Welcome everybody to the Pickens County Planning and Zoning regular meeting. Today is Tuesday, December 5th. And present here in the room, we have Doug and Jeff. And online, we have Chelsea, Jasmine, and Suzanne present. So we have a quorum. And the, let's see, any commissioner comments? Staff comments?
The only thing would be to the
Amend the
agenda.
agenda.
Yeah.
So we were just
Be a
gonna,
motion.
no,
Go
you
ahead.
go, you go.
I don't have the agenda. in front.
Oh, you don't have the agenda in front of you.
I would make a motion to move land use code text amendment, which is the GMQS exemption for large lot parcels, 500+ acres. Richard Neely birthday boy to the first section. And apologies to Stefan and
Yeah,
to
thank you for your,
moving to second.
your second on that motion.
Yeah.
Second.
There we go.
Oh, sorry. Sure.
Other than that, no other staff comments.
Okay, I don't see any members of the public here. And there's no room. There's any public members that. And then the next thing, we're on to our land use action with the RC ownership Redstone Castle.
Well, we just amended the agenda so that. Not here.
Your item.
Sorry about that. All right, the reason I'm back here is because on October 3rd, we all, for the P and Z, made a recommendation to the BOCC to change the land use code with regard to exemptions for large lots and parcels of 500+ acres. You'll recall that there's an exemption in the land use code for 500-acre parcels or larger that provides a GMQS exemption as currently drafted for a single-family residence up to 15,000 square feet of floor area. The Planning and Zoning Commission on October 3rd made a recommendation to the BOCC to amend the land use code to modify the exemption for 500-acre parcels. The substance of the changes was to move the exemption from an administrative approval by the Community Development Director to a BOCC approval through a special review process, and to require a conservation easement be recorded against the property at the time of site plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission made a unanimous recommendation for the BOCC, along with some suggestions for consideration. The BOCC considered the recommendation on November 15th, I believe. The November 15th meeting, the BOCC approved it on first reading, but did have a proposed change to the language that was in response to some public comment received. Specifically, what I handed out in front of you, the change is to section 630-73, which deals with previous approvals. It's on the second page of what I handed out tonight, and it's on page 12 of Exhibit A, which will be in the packet. Land Use Code Section 24010 requires that if the BOCC makes a substantial change to a land use code text amendment in between first read, after receiving a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, that it be re-referred to the P and Z to consider that change for a recommendation of denial and suggestions associated with that. The section regarding previous approvals, I had struck that section in its entirety in the prior action that the P and Z considered and then the BOCC considered on November 15th. In response to some public comment received, the BOCC directed staff to consider whether prior approvals or previous approvals, whether there should be some recognition that some properties previously utilized the 500-acre GMQS exemption, and that the changes that we're in front of the board would essentially eliminate the prior approvals that were received prior to 2006. These changes are relatively, or this change affects relatively few properties in Pickens County. But it does, instead of striking section 3 in the entirety, it does recognize that properties that have received approvals to utilize a 500-acre GMQS exemption prior to 2006, that those approvals remain in place. The change that's in front of you now does recognize, instead of allowing development up to 15,000 square feet, that development will be permitted on the property up to the final maximum floor area in the applicable zone district. So as you know, this board considered changes to the land use code recently, potentially reduce house size in Pickens County in various ways, where depending on where you're located in the county, and recommended a house size cap of 9,250 with the P&Z. So in the event that this is located in the majority of the county, anyone who had a prior approval prior to 2006 would be able to develop up to that maximum house size in the zone district. Largely the substance of what the changes in front of P&Z now, or what I'm asking the P&Z to do is to make a motion to recommend that the BOCC approve this change in the land use code text amendment that is going to be considered by the BOCC tomorrow. So that's, I recommend you do that, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about this. And I don't know if it's up to the chair. This isn't a public hearing, but if you wanted to take public comment on it, you could certainly do that if there's anybody interested. So,
Well, I guess we'll start and see if any commissioners have any questions for Rye.
Just
About the amended text.
amended text is just down on 9250 max, or
It is.
unless it's in the caucus area where it's left.
correct. It's real largely to recognize that when I honestly, I didn't think about the effect on prior approvals when I made the prior text amendment. Yeah, and I didn't know how many of them were out there. I didn't even know if there were any out there, and there's a handful of them in the county, and it seemed most equitable to allow folks that previously utilized this exemption to continue recognizing that. Oftentimes there's development agreements associated with that approval that have been in place for decades. So,
I'll make a motion to approve the new language that's submitted.
Great. Is there a
I don't
second?
know if there's any other conversation.
Second.
Yes, well, is there anyone that'd like to make public comment?
We do have 2 people online. If you would push *6, if you'd like to raise your hand and make any comment on this particular item, please do so. No one's raising, so you want to give it another minute or?
I think we'll be good. So, Doug has made a motion to accept the amended language. And, Yasmin has a second, so I guess we'll take a vote. Roll call vote, let's see what we have. Suzanne,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
yes, Jeff,
Yes.
all right, Doug, you made the second, so, and it's a yes from me, so unanimous.
thank you.
There you go. All right, I was gonna try to put you to the end.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you all. Appreciate jumping ahead.
All right, and I guess now we're on to the Redstone Castle land use application.
Suzanne?
Yes. I need to leave the meeting at this point, and I wouldn't do it unless we had a quorum. but I have an ear infection and a ruptured eardrum, and I have pain, in addition, it's very hard to hear. I understood, I wouldn't have voted a minute ago unless I had been able to lean forward and listen very carefully. But, so I'm going to step down at this point.
Thanks for being here. And hope you can get better.
You need to turn the video.
Did I just miss?
So one thing. When Suzanne was having a hard time, if we can make sure that we can speak towards the owl when we're talking, that would help with the volume, please.
You can't speak another parallel?
One day I will get you one and spread it out. I will make sure that happens on the next
More
one.
than 1 hour, is it?
Yes.
Okay, it's a herd.
Hey, Bonnie, I'm trying to find my PDF.
Just a minute.
To share. It was on the screen. Oh, now I have to do that. Okay. Hi.
Wow.
Okay. Are we? Or no, I have to turn this on? No. Okay, okay. So, hi, Leslie Lamont. City Planner. So what we're gonna do today for you guys is, as you saw in my memo, if we're recommended continuation, there's an hour zone. So what we'd like to do, Glenn and I have talked about this, is, I will just do some brief introductory comments and then turn this over to Sarah and Glenn, probably Stefan, Mark, if he has any comments. And, they'll, do their full presentation to you, and then I will wrap up just with a, basic kind of reminder of the 14 items or so, items that we're asking the applicant to submit to us, before the next continuation, for the next meeting. So first and foremost, what I want to introduce you to, and Glenn will go over this with you, but really quickly, we're talking about 3 different parcels in this application. So this is Castle Parcel A, and then Castle Parcel B, which is the carriage house parcel. And both Parcel A and Parcel B have an historic easement on them. And then we have Barn Parcel C. That does not have a historic easement on it. And then I just want to, just for your reiteration, because it's important, we've reached out to a lot of people on this application. We referred the application to quite a few referral entities. And these are the folks that we heard from. I also today I think you did as well, your team did as well. Redstone Water and Sanitation District sent a letter to me about an hour ago. So we have that. I got it too late to, even pass along, but we'll make sure that gets into the files. And, it is something that, we requested some information on, and I can elaborate on that a little bit when I get to the end of my comments.
If I can say something now, I was approached by the Crystal Valley.
Sedepa?
Sedepa, and asked if they could be a referral agency as well. And I don't know what their standing is, or not their targets or whatever, but, they asked if they could see the application and
So I think I referred the application to them. But I will reach out to them, make sure they get the application. For example, it was also referred to the Crystal River Caucus. We didn't get comments from folks either, but I'll double check that, Doug. I'll make sure that they get the application. So these are the items, these 6 sections out of the code that you guys are going to be considering as you consider the application. And as you saw in my memo, staff talked about each section in the code, utilized text from the applicant in those sections and did a whole analysis of that. We can walk through all of that at our next meeting with you. We'll do all of that, but I just want to make sure you understand that these are the sections out of the code that we're considering as part of this. And I think, yeah, that's it for me for now. And I'm going to turn it over, unless you guys have any initial questions for me, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen now.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll see if I can do that.
Best of luck.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Wow. Can I tell you this? Get rid of this stuff over here.
just gone to grading.
Can you move it up above or something?
Move it down. Grab the top and then drag it down. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, thanks, Leslie, and I think I got this. I'm gonna move this up. Okay. All right, so my name's Glenn Horn, for the record, and I represent the owner of the Redstone Castle. I want to introduce Stefan DeBates, the owner of the castle. Stefan also owns and operates the St. Regis Hotel in the city of Aspen. He owns a tourist accommodation resort and wellness facility in Thailand, and one that is going to be opening in January in Tuscany. We're proposing to operate the Redstone Castle as a tourist accommodations resort with accessory wellness facilities. The castle property is zoned Village Lodge Preservation. The county adopted the Redstone Castle Village Lodge Preservation plan, actually the zone district and plan in 2018. Zach, you're probably the only guy.
I was just pulling up my email from 2018.
Yeah.
So
So
reviewing
all
it
the members,
last night, and I'm feeling, yeah.
Jeffrey, were you on were you involved in those hearings, or was it just Zach?
I was in it
Yeah.
too, Glenn. I voted for it then too.
Chelsea was there too. So anyway, it was done in 2018. We created the zone district. The district was based to a large extent on the county's ski rec zone district. And it's a master plan that's supposed to be for about 10 years and create flexibility. And the product of it is a listing of uses that are permitted and those that are by further review. So the approved plan permits the castle to operate as a special event wedding facility for large weddings and to operate as a 21-room hotel with rooms in the Redstone Castle, the Carriage House, and the Hose House. This slide that's on the screen here shows the location of the property. And let me orient you a little bit. This is the Redstone Inn. So the left side of the screen is to the north in a down valley direction. And the right side of the screen is up valley and to the south. And as Leslie said, there are 3 parcels: the castle parcel, there's the carriage house parcel, and the barn parcel. And I'll show that more clearly on the next screen. Here you see Highway 82, Highway 133, and the Crystal River that border the property on the west side, and its Forest Service ground above the property to the east. So this slide is similar to what Leslie showed you. There are about 154 acres on the property. It's divided into 3 parcels. The castle parcel, which is this one, 72 acres. The carriage house parcel in the middle, which is 40 acres, and then the barn parcel to the north, which is 42 acres. So I'm going to start the presentation by just touching upon the existing conditions, and then I'm going to turn the meeting over to Sarah, who's going to present a short overview on the historic significance of the castle. Then I'm going to review the approved master plan and the proposed amendments to the plan. So this is an existing conditions map. And let me just kind of orient you a little bit. You've got first the roads. Let's see. Oops. Okay, here you have the roads. Right around here at this location is what we call the Y, and that's where the roads split from the extension of Redstone Boulevard. If you follow this road in a northerly direction to the left, it goes down to the Redstone Inn and joins the boulevard. At this point, you go on to the castle property, and there's a gate, and there's the Redstone Castle Lane that goes to the east, and in a westerly direction, you have the Redstone Castle Drive below it. If you follow Redstone Castle Lane, you get onto this area here where the barn complex is. Go beyond it, it goes to the carriage house, and then to the Redstone Castle. From that point, you go above the castle and around this loop, which is called Alma's Loop. And then it goes back into Redstone Castle Drive and to the Y at the entrance to the property. I'll point out right here, this is the old T-bar that was built in about 1961. There was a ski run here. This section of the property where this hand is right now is where the ski run is on an alluvial fan. That alluvial fan flows every now and then with debris. And the fan was essentially formed by these debris flows over geologic time. There is a man-made channel that carries the flow. And there's also a natural channel to the north that at one time was the predominant course of the flows, but over time there are plugs and blockages, and the debris changes course, which is what forms the fan over time. Looking at some of these buildings here, you've got this is the castle. You've got the garden shed and to the right of that, which would be in a southerly direction. The hose house, Sarah's going to be talking about these a little more. These are all historically designated. The carriage house is historically designated, and the dog kennel by the barn is also historically designated. There's a conservation easement that runs on the south side here. That's the border of the conservation easement. It's a historical conservation easement. and it goes all the way over to the edge of the carriage parcel on the northerly side. So all of this land in here is in the historical conservation easement. This area here on the south side around Alma's Loop is not in the easement, nor is the land to the north around the barn complex, the old ski run and the T-bar. So I think that kind of gives you an overview of the physical characteristics of the land. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah to give you a brief overview on the historic aspects of the property.
You have to
Undo.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Maybe if you move that guy out of the way, you can. I can.
Stop.
Can you do it for him? Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. Full screen, so that looks really good. This is the fun part, right? You get to hear about the history. So I'm Sarah Adams with Bendon Adams, and I specialize in historic preservation. I have about just under a 5-minute presentation of the history and the buildings in case you didn't make it to the site visit, just to highlight this really special property. It's one of the most historic properties in the state. And so always good to remind everyone about the special stuff we have in Pitkin County. So this is the story of Cleveholm Manor. It's Pitkin County's first, but definitely wasn't the last large estate that we have. It's commonly referred to as the Redstone Castle. This is the home of industrialist John C. Osgood. He was a self-made man. He shaped the industrial development of the Crystal River Valley. He's responsible for the planned company town of Redstone as well as the castle. Cleveholm Manor took 3 years to build and design. It was completed in 1903. It's 42 rooms in the castle and about 24,000 square feet. The castle really completes the story of the town of Redstone, and it solidifies Osgood's position as an industrial capitalist and one of the richest men in the United States at the turn of the century. What I think is really important for the conversation you'll be having about the proposed use is in the early 1900s, Osgood entertained many dignitaries during his summers at the castle property. He really built this to bring people out to Redstone to experience the Crystal River Valley. Some of the visitors included Teddy Roosevelt, John Rockefeller, and J.P. Morgan. And I think consistent with this history of how the castle was used, the castle properties are proposed to be a wellness and accommodation destination. It's pretty unique in historic preservation to return a property back to one of its original functions of connecting people with nature and enjoying the grounds. So here's Osgood, his awesome mustache. So John Cleveland Osgood was born in New York. He was orphaned at age 7. He was raised by family, but took night classes, earned a degree in accounting. He put his degree to use, made some good investments, obviously, and purchased a coal and mining company. It was the lead supplier of coal for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad at the time. So seeing the success there, he traveled west in 1882. He was looking for high quality coking coal, and he ended up in the Crystal River Valley. So over the next 10 years, he gathered investors and experts to grow this new venture, which he called the Colorado Fuel Company. It supplied coal to the railroads. He also invested in the marble quarries in the town of Marble. During this time, he focused on bringing transportation to the Crystal River Valley, which is really important for the development of the valley. Because obviously without a railroad at the time, you couldn't transport any of the materials you were extracting. So that was really his first focus. So by 1899, transportation was in place that allowed mining to start at Coal Basin. Osgood merged his company to create the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, which is called CF&I, which was based in Pueblo at the time. He was the owner of the majority share of coal in the state of Colorado. He became known as the Fuel King of the West, and at that time began planning his model village of Redstone and the Redstone Castle, which was his country home. Here's some photos of the town of Redstone. I think this is kind of amazing. Between 1899 and 1903, he built 250 coke ovens, some of which you can see on 133. He built the village of Redstone, or funded the building of the village of Redstone, and the castle and all the accessory structures between 1899 and 1903. It's kind of amazing. The buildings within the Redstone Historic District are really a testament to the paternalistic role that Osgood played in the growth and the development of Redstone. He often invested his own money for improvements. He really emphasized health, safety, and family. He provided architect-designed modern buildings at the time, which is pretty amazing. They had indoor plumbing and electricity. So he was married 3 times. This is his second wife, Alma. She was a Swedish immigrant and she was a champion of miners' rights. She was a constant presence in the town, and gained the nickname Lady Bountiful for her kindness towards the miners and their families. She's responsible for decorating the interiors of the castle. When they were traveling through Europe and the United States, some of the original fixtures and things in the castle, she purchased and brought back to put into the castle. So the year the castle was completed, 1903, it was the same year that Osgood lost control of CF&I to Rockefeller and Jay Gould. After they took control of the business for the development of Redstone was abandoned, it was really Osgood's focus. It was kind of his project. And Osgood resigned from the company. In 1909, the coal basin mines were closed and the coke ovens were shut down. Osgood closed the castle in 1911. He returned in 1925 with his 3rd wife at the time, Lucille Reed, who then died 2 years later in 1926 at the castle. Lucille, his 3rd wife, and subsequent owners, as Glenn mentioned in the application, have tried to operate the estate as a resort, a wedding venue, lodge, country club, bed and breakfast. Over the decades, there's been a lot of different uses. As Glenn also mentioned, in 2005, there was a conservation easement that was granted to the Colorado Historical Foundation after the IRS acquired the property. So there was a lot of deferred maintenance in the decades before the easement was granted to the Colorado Historic Foundation. The property is included in the Redstone Historic District, which was designated in 1980. And then as some of you remember, in 2018, these structures that I'll review with you were locally designated to the Pickens County Register. So there's a lot of protections on the historic structures on this property. Okay, so here's a color map of what Glenn was walking you through. I think he did a really great job orienting you to kind of the directions of where everything is located. The conservation easement is in yellow, and this uniquely involves not just exterior protections, but also interior protections, which is pretty special. I think it's important to highlight, and this is in my letter in the application, that there's minimal changes to the historic buildings, which I don't usually get to say when I'm presenting these projects, and I think that's pretty outstanding. The new buildings are clustered all over in this area here, which really preserves the sense of place and the context around the castle and the carriage house and the other buildings that I'll walk you through in a second. Colorado Historic Foundation has been a partner in this project. We've checked in with them a few times. They've been to the site. We walked the site with Susanna Reed and Cindy as well. And they are generally supportive of the direction of this project. One of the most important things I want to emphasize is that a viable use is proposed for these buildings. And a viable use means constant maintenance and upkeep, which will protect these buildings into the future. I mean, that's the key to historic preservation, is reusing these buildings in a way that there's always someone there, the lights are on, you can do the maintenance when it comes up. This project proposes to revitalize the property into a lodging retreat. It'll provide a holistic approach to wellness using the castle setting and the surrounding natural environment as the foundation for a meaningful health and wellness, well-being experience. I think that's really tied to what Osgood's vision was for this country retreat for him and the people that he wanted to entertain. So I'm going to go through the buildings and then I'll turn it back to Glenn. So here's a photo of the castle, which I'm sure you've all seen, but you know, it's important to start there. The carriage house is really hard to get a good photo of, but here are a few pieces of the carriage house. The hose house, and you can see it's kind of tracking with my little map. The hose house is located right here. The garden shed. Here's the gazebo, which is located down by the Crystal River. We have the dog kennel, which is the only thing that's not within the historic easement, but was locally designated right here. We have the entrance gates, which are down here where Glenn was pointing out the Y in the drive. And then we also have some reservoir ruins. This is a photo of a wall. They really are ruins. It's also hard to get a good photo of those. So those are all the pieces that are protected under these various protections that I've explained. And then just to conclude, at least from my perspective, from a historic preservation consultant perspective, the proposed project really balances a sensitive approach to new construction and preservation of the historic context around the castle by tucking and clustering the new buildings into the landscape in a way that minimally impacts the historic structures and really preserves that sense of place that's so important to understanding the history of Redstone, not just the village, but also the castle and its relationship between the two. I think it really takes a specific, passionate and committed owner to take on the expense of preserving and maintaining all these structures. They were built in 1903, they're wood. There's a lot of snow up there. There's a lot of maintenance that needs to happen. And it's not just the structures, it's the interior fixtures as well within the castle and all the added layers of review process with the historic easement and Pitkin County and the Redstone Historic Preservation Commission as well. I think you really need to find a sustainable income producing use for this property. And the proposal tonight will really ensure the long-term maintenance and the viability of these unique historic resources on the property. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the history. But if not, I will pass it on. Sure.
Since it's on the National Historic Register, does
Mhm.
the Department of Interior have a say, or this is all outside of the existing easement? So
Mhm.
what we're really talking about over the next couple weeks takes place outside the easement?
Yeah, most of it takes place outside of the easement. Being on the register is kind of an honorary designation. The teeth of the designation really are in the conservation easement and in the local designation. Being on the National Register, we just need to comply with the guidelines, which are a watered down version of what Pitkin County has. So we have, it's all covered. That's a good question.
And so the follow-up, which you say is a bad question, any of the Swiss or Tudor influence showing up in the new architecture, or there's no deference whatsoever required or anticipated? So it's
yeah.
more of a, how does the new fit in with the old, I guess?
Yeah,
And you
I
can say it's not related because it's not covered under the easement.
Yeah, I think we'll get to that in the presentation, when Roland and Broughton has done a very careful analysis of existing conditions, and I think it's best for them to explain kind of how the relationship works
But they're not-
between
they're not
everything,
tied.
everything on the property. Mhm. I mean, the Historic Preservation Commission in Redstone will get to review all of the changes on the property. I'm not sure exactly when that's happening, but that is part of the review, and same with Susanna Reed. You're welcome.
So now I'll talk about the approved plan and the proposed amendments to the plan. I mistakenly didn't introduce Mark Hamilton, who's the attorney for the project. And Mark was also the attorney for the prior owner when we went through the adoption of the zone change in 2018 and the plan. So let's try to share again. Let's look at the approved plan. The approved master plan really was dependent upon and features the venue, the property being used as a special event venue. Initially, the Board of County Commissioners approved 35 special events, which would be primarily weddings for 150 people. And the idea behind the approval was, as the owner of the property showed that those special events were working on the property, based upon annual reviews, the number of events each year would increase in quantity over the years. And it would initially be 35 special events. The plan that the prior owner had was to pretty much be a wedding venue where there would be a special event in the summertime almost every weekend. The plan also featured a requirement to have public tours, which Stefan has continued to have on the property, and the property is available for public tours on a regular basis. The approved master plan featured 33 tourist accommodation units. There were 10 guest rooms in the castle, 2 guest rooms in the carriage house, 1 guest room in the hose house, and all of those structures exist. There would be 8 new rooms in 4 cottages. Those would be 2-bedroom cottages, and there would be 12 rooms in 4 3-bedroom cabins. And so it was primarily a special event venue, with the tourist accommodations being a part of the approval, but not really the primary use. It was more of an accessory use to the special events, and that's what the approved master plan is. This is the activity envelope and site plan for the property, and it shows the approved envelopes. It's on 2 sheets. There's an envelope that encompasses the castle, an envelope that encompasses the carriage house, and an envelope that encompasses the area around the barn complex. This envelope over here on the Up Valley side to the south, inside of Alma's Loop, was approved for 4 cottages to be developed there. Those would have been 4 2-bedroom cottages. And there's an envelope approved to the north of the barn complex. To give you orientation, here's the envelope, and it would abut this area right here where the barn complex is. The idea being that there would be 4 cabins, 4 3-bedroom cabins developed somewhere in this envelope, adjacent to where the ski run is. If you look at the bottom where the hand is here, this is the bottom of the T-bar, and it runs to the top of the screen. And the proposal was for these cabins to be developed subject to site plan review in the future. And we are trying to incorporate the 4 cabins into this envelope, as well as relocating the 4 cottages into the same envelope so they're clustered together. The amended master plan features this as a tourist accommodations facility with 20 tourist accommodation units as opposed to 32. 8 guest rooms would be in the 4 cottages, 12 guest rooms in the 4 cabins. We're proposing that there be accessory uses to the tourist accommodations facility, primarily a wellness retreat, and the wellness functions would take place in the castle, the carriage house, and in the barn, which would be converted to a hydrotherapy center. So you might wonder, what is a wellness facility? So let me shrink this. A wellness center was not defined in the code. So we took a crack at writing a definition, and this would be part of the code amendment. A wellness center is defined as a facility offering treatments for physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Treatments may include, but are not limited to, maintaining health, preventing illness, massage therapy, physical therapy, yoga, stretching, hydrotherapy, weight control, and detox. So that's the proposed definition. Leslie has suggested that we work on this definition a little bit in our conversations. What she said is that we want to make a distinction between a wellness treatment center and a rehab facility for people that are abusing drugs or have alcohol issues. And so that's not what this is intended to be. It's supposed to be more for improving your health and your physical and mental well-being. So if you go back to this slide, the other uses that we're proposing are a commercial kitchen that would be located in one of the garages, an employee lounge in another garage. The idea being is that the wellness functions will take place in the Castle Carriage House and the Hydrotherapy Center. The Castle will also serve as the reception facility for guests that are staying on the property. That's where people will go to have their meals. We're proposing that the meals be prepared in the commercial kitchen, but then just would be reheated and served in the Castle kitchen. The Castle kitchen is not capable of functioning as a commercial kitchen given the constraints of the historic structure. We're proposing to develop a greenhouse outside of the historic conservation easement. The greenhouse would be used to grow produce that would be served to guests at the facility. And any additional produce that's grown would be probably sold or shared with the community. There are 16 two-bedroom employee units proposed on the property for the employees of the operation. The amended master plan has some significant benefits for the community. There would be a new 88-acre open space wildlife conservation easement to complement the existing 21-acre historic conservation easement. There would be ongoing public tours to ensure that the property is accessible to the general public. This is the graphic master plan that Sarah presented in part to you, and it shows the Castle Carriage House proposed greenhouse, the barn complex. Would be the hydrotherapy building. The dog kennel would serve as a place where guests could go pick up sporting equipment, maybe cross-country skis, snowshoes, to recreate on the property. One garage would be a commercial kitchen, the other an employee lounge and changing area. This structure is a relocated pole barn. We're proposing to cluster the cabins and cottages in this area here on the alluvial fan. And we're proposing a debris flow mitigation fence above the T-bar. That would be a GeoBrug fence, which is a flexible metal fence. You may have seen them. There are some on Shadow Mountain. They're all over in the Alps to protect private property and citizens from debris flow. So we're proposing these fences in this location where they would protect all of the cabins and cottages that are on the alluvial fan. It would also protect the T-bar. The fences are located just above the T-bar so that the top terminal would be protected. And you can see here, these are the cottages and cabins clustered in this area on the alluvial fan. And I'll note for you the distance between the top of the T-bar and the debris flow mitigation fences to cabins A3 and A4, which are a point of discussion in Leslie's memo. This is a view of the cabins and cottages looking in a westerly direction, downhill across the valley. If you go back to this slide, the photo is taken about in this area here, looking to the west, and it gives you a sense of what these cabins and cottages would look like. This is the proposed recreational trail system that would be developed on the property, primarily using old roads and trails that are there, so that people that are staying in the cottages and cabins as guests could enjoy the property and follow the trail system to the wellness treatment that would occur in the castle and the carriage house. This slide shows the, This slide shows the conserved land that is in the site vicinity. Here you have the castle carriage house parcels and the barn parcel. And you can see on the right side of the screen, shaded in green, is conserved open space land that's in conservation easements or in public ownership. And you can see across the valley, there also is conserved land. We're proposing to add to this land with a major conservation easement on the 3 parcels to the east of the existing conservation easement for historic purposes that's shown in blue. Here's a map that shows the proposed conserved land. There would be 49 acres on the castle parcel, 28 acres on the carriage house parcel, and 12 acres on the barn parcel. So the majority of the site would be placed in conservation to expand upon the conserved land in the site vicinity. There are some significant advantages associated with this plan as compared to the approved plan. There would be a reduction in the tourist accommodation units from 33 to 20 units. This would be a destination use property where guests come and stay for a week to 6 days to a week. It's a quiet use that's compatible with the Crystal River Valley. There was quite a bit of discussion in 2018 about the disruptive nature of this being a special event venue on every weekend where you would have 150 guests coming in. There was concern over noise and just the compatibility with this being a special event venue with the Redstone Ranch Acres property to the subdivision to the north and the subdivision on the west side of Highway 133 that's right across the river from this property. There'd be a reduction in traffic associated with this plan. The plan will not be dependent on the weekly special events. We have a financially feasible plan, and with Stefan and his experience with his resorts in Thailand, as well as the one in Tuscany, a proven operator who knows how to operate hotels. He runs the St. Regis in town, and we believe it's a superior plan for the Crystal River Valley and the Redstone area to the 2018 plan that we're amending. So with that, I just want to ask Stefan whether you have any comments that you would like to add or fill in any gaps or correct anything that I might have said that was inaccurate.
No, everything is accurate. Well, thank you for your time and thank you for the opportunity to present this ambitious but very realistic plan. I think when we acquired the property, we did a lot of study prior, but we also listened to the feedback of the community. And it's important for Redstone to exist in the future. And since the birth of Redstone, the castle has always been tied up with the town. And what has been proven over the previous 13, I'm number 13 owner. So the 12 prior ownership have proven that there's only 2 realistic use. Either it's your private home and you're gonna have a rich person turning it back as a mansion, or you need to find a viable long-term solution. And face it, a 10 or 12 bedroom bed and breakfast does not fit the bill. So this is why the prior owners said, well, the only way I can create cash flow is to create a party house and do weddings. But then the town or the little town of Redstone said, well, we don't like that because it's disturbing, it's noise, it's not a constant flow of businesses. So we think that by doing this longevity wellness resort, first you create a DNA for what the Crystal River stands for. And we all all have been there, right? When you sit in between those mountains, the first thing that goes to your mind is, this is pretty damn cool. This is nature at its best, and it has to do something good for me. So I think the wellness DNA of Redstone fits the bill. But also, wellness is a quiet tourism, quality tourism and quiet tourism facility. You know, if you go there because you want to clean your body, mind and soul, you don't want to listen to loud music. You don't want to disturb the quietness of your peers. But yet you want to understand how does it fit into the town of Redstone. So I think that beyond economic viability for the land that we purchase, it probably is going to create economic viability for the greater community. So it was very important for us to understand and to work a plan. We've all obviously have an ambitious plan. There's some on-site affordable housing. It will require about 30 to 40 employees to run these facilities. They have to live somewhere. And we don't really want them to travel on Highway 133 with the mudslides and everything. It's not safe. So we have plenty of land. We think that it's best to create affordable housing on site. And I think we had a positive review on this. I've gone through the list of concern respectfully, and I agree to most of it. I think we've addressed some, but what I would also maybe make a point is, it's very difficult to, at the application level, to know what the future is going to be and to be very detailed in some of the aspects. But I think what we can certainly do together is to work on a set of rules to obey in the future final application. So time is my biggest enemy. Is the only thing. We may live longer, but I don't know if I can change the time. So if you do have any question, we've put a lot of passion. I live in Pitkin County with my family. So it's very important to do it right for me. I'm not like an outside investor, and I'm open to finding solutions if they are reasonable, should there be any points to be considered. And I'm here to answer any question.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Sebastian or Stefan? Sorry.
Yeah.
So, no, I've got a couple. Is it okay for questions?
Is Roland and Broughton going to be presenting?
They're watching.
Oh, are you done with your presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
So I won't repeat the questions or concerns that were in the packet that Stefan also alluded to, because I think it also has P and Z needs to see this before final approval. My first question or concern is, we really need to update chapter 11. It seems that there's a lot of definitions in chapter 11 that would, we have a lot of, I agree that there's not one definition for wellness. I will give you that. The question is, do we need to update the land use code with another definition? So for example, and you can cut me off if you don't like this line of question, but we have medical or dental clinic that already has physical therapy and massage therapy. And I know this is not your business, so it's really a pedantic question of, do we need to? We already have commercial development, we have clubhouse recreation, we have meeting hall or conference center, we have dwelling units, we have entertainment and rec that includes Nordic skiing, area and facilities and outdoor rec. And we have health, yoga, etc. So I'm just wondering why we can, again, you could say, Jeffrey, it's 4 lines of ad, let's just do it. It's separate and unique from everything. I mean, it seems like health and wellness, we have 10 definitions and you're collapsing it to 1. And I can send you all my chapter 11 notes, but it's really a question of why do we need to go through that?
The reason why we chose to propose an amendment is because whenever we've presented this or discussed it, people say, well, what is a wellness center? What is a wellness retreat? And so we tried to come up with a definition of what the activity is. We view it as being accessory to the primary activity, which is the tourist accommodations. But it's like, for example, when we did Highlands Village and the hotels there, there are health facilities associated with, the hotels and the Ritz at Highlands. But those are more traditional, and then there's just spa, weight room, things
Right.
like that, where there's already definitions in the code for them. But those were approved as accessory uses to the hotel operation. But in this case, it was a little different, sort of a concept, and that's why we wrote the definition of what a wellness treatment facility would be. So it was clear, what we're saying would be the accessory use on this property.
And should help in terms of approvals and the town's appetite, et cetera, because it's defined. Is what, I mean, because I see it in 10 definitions.
It's there.
It's there, yeah.
But the thing is, we kept referring to this wellness treatment facility, and we were challenged to define what it meant.
Okay.
And we based it to a very large extent upon Stefan's experience with his resort in Thailand and looking at what the activities and functions are there. And that was the basis for it.
So my follow-up question then is going back to the packet. There's probably 10 bookmarks or so, maybe you said there were more, that are things required in order for P and Z to see in order to be forwarded onto the BOCC. So are we anticipating all those action items will be closed out?
That's the goal.
Okay. The only one that really, it's not a red flag, I've heard it as a blue flag, but it's, and staff raised concern over the number of employees generated. There's no FTEs generated by the greenhouse. So it's a 4,800 square foot greenhouse, and having just picked up a box of veggies from a Pickens County open space site, it seems like something that could be employee generation off that. And again, it's not a sticking point, but it's just.
Yeah, I mean, the way we look.
Again, I applaud your on-site, providing units, but it's like.
Yeah, but it's tied up to the nutritional aspect of the food and beverage, right? What we try to teach our people is that you can actually grow what you eat. So the wellness, the way we look at it is based on 4 pillars. One is nutrition, one is movement, one is holistic, and one is medical health. So the way we assign our employees is, if you're going to be in the food and beverage section, you need to understand nutrition. And part of the nutrition is to go and grow the quality ingredient that we use.
I would say then update the table, that's page 42 of 67, that just captures that concern. So
Right.
if you're saying someone is working the kitchen, but they're also.
Well, I mean, the reality for employee generation is, and the way we've approached it at the hotel is that we always open to an annual audit, right? At the end of the day, the number of employees is the number of employees.
It's on 42 of 67 in the map.
Right. And I think that was the staff recommendation too, is to conduct annual audit. And if we're above, then we pay the mitigation. If we're below, then we all look good. It's very difficult to stamp people and say, you fit in that box and not that one.
It's just not captured that, I mean, you articulated it and defined it, but it's not captured that way in the table.
Okay, I'm sure we
So
can address that.
I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Can I ask a question related to employees, please?
Please, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I guess I want to start by commending that. I think it's great that I like the plan a lot. And I've been to a lot of wellness centers that are similar to this. So I get the drill. And I have a question follow-up about that. And I also think it's smart that you amended the special use rights for events to, remain. Like, I think it's 4 a year, and you'll have an annual review of how those events go versus like 35 events. That's great that you're scaling back large uses. But you're also, it seems to me, increasing employees on site. And this question doesn't relate to fees so much. Someone smarter than me will calculate the employee impact fee, but is there infrastructure there to support on-site residents of employees on a year-round basis, like a septic system and enough livable infrastructure for that many people all the time? I mean, it was built like that 100 years ago. I get it. There were supposed to be people on site, but they didn't build it to sustain 100 years of use of that infrastructure. So just curious about the infrastructure and the power and things like that.
Well, the utilities are there. We did a traffic study that shows there'll be a reduction in traffic with this proposal as compared to the approved one. We're within the boundaries of the Redstone Water and Sanitation District. The district provided a will serve letter to us, which is included in the application. And Leslie can comment upon a new letter that they sent a half hour, 45 minutes before the meeting. That is an issue with respect to the wastewater treatment, and that there's an addendum to their will serve letter.
Would you like me to comment now? Or,
Well, maybe
Yeah,
you want to go through issues. I don't know how you want to handle it, Leslie.
well, Chelsea, to answer your question, according to the engineering report and including the traffic impact study that was provided in the application, there are utilities to serve the project, including power and I don't know, the cell service is.
I get it, there's utilities, but is there enough to like sustain 40 people year round flushing toilets and turn, if
So basically.
sounds like that's what the follow-up letter's about.
Yeah. So, and you guys didn't have the opportunity to see this because we just got this letter from Redstone Water and Sand District, but they have the board members have commented for a couple months that they were concerned about their future capacity of the plant to serve the number of EQRs that are coming through. We got a letter today about now, like 2 hours ago, that said they that the EQRs of this project, from a sanitation perspective, not fresh water, potable water, but sanitation, that will exceed the capacity of their plant. And so one of their conditions of approval is to pay for the design costs and upgrade of the plant. So we all just got that. So that now has to feed into what Stefan and his team have to look at.
Yeah, and our position was, if there was a concern, we receive a will serve letter, right? And I think there was a meeting planned that got canceled. And we are willing to work with people. We just need to understand what the concern is. If it's a fair mitigation, let's talk about it. If there is a capacity issue, let's understand from the engineers what the capacity issue is and what is the best mitigation around that. I thought it was a Christmas letter and say Merry Christmas and we love your application. Unfortunately, it was more, well, you need to pay for the future expansion. So we can work together, and I think Mark can talk about it. He's on.
Okay. I guess that sounds like a question we can address next time then. So good luck dealing with that. That sounds like a sticky situation. I could use a different word. Is question for staff, is the Bay-Ewell retreat in Pitkin County
Yeah,
yeah, it is. That's what I thought. What are they defined as? Like, are they under some sort of similar definition? Because to Jeffrey's point, do we need to redefine this in the land use code, or is there something that, and I know Glenn already tried to answer this for Jeffrey, but what is Bay-Ewell Retreats use defined as?
so I mean, they operate as basically a grandfathered lodging facility. In terms of different activities they provide for their guests. They haven't come through any sort of review process with us to change anything about their facilities at this point. So, we haven't dug into all of the uses that might be going on. So essentially, they're like, Glenn mentioned other hotels that might have certain, they offer classes or they have maybe spa offerings. Again, I think it's falling within the lodging facility. And it hasn't, we haven't looked at maybe more of the detailed types of uses that are happening out there as part of that now. As they kind of grow.
Okay, that answers my question. I was just curious. And then I guess I was just at Amangiri in Utah. It was a very low impact. I'm guessing this is sort of going to be similar, Stefan, but one thing that I did notice happened a lot at the various Amans I've stayed at is people helicoptering in and out. You can't land a helicopter in there. There's no like rights for air traffic in and out of there, or is there?
No, short answer. No,
Just curious because I saw it a lot at, other Amans. So, okay. That's all my questions for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Chelsea. Anyone else? Questions? Doug? Yasmin?
Well, my question had to do, I think most of them were answered by Glenn about the numbers, what was currently approved versus where it ends up. And the EQR question brings it up as well, whether the Redstone is now said, and so the total EQRs, which is, kind of a way to count the units and everything like that. I understand that the rental units are decreased by over a third. I think the employee housing is more, there's different things. So the total, I guess, is somewhat important to me. With the total, and whether we use EQRs or whether we use bedrooms or dwelling units or however that's done, that's a number that I'm interested in. I think this plan sounds great. I think there's been a lot of thought put into it. It sounds like a good use for the property and to save it and all those kind of things. So conceptually, as I say, numbers are, I'm a numbers guy. One of those things I like to understand.
I don't want to go back to this for very long, but just briefly, and Doug knows this because in another life we work on water and sand issues together. But just to clarify, this letter just came in. We haven't had time to assess it. We don't know the engineering behind it. But to be clear for the board, just to alleviate any concern, there's an emergency right now. It's not that the plant is at capacity today. It's not that it would be at capacity even if this project is connected. What happens is that the Colorado Department of Public Health strictly regulates water and sand districts, and they require annual reporting. And basically to avoid, particularly in rural areas that are underfunded, they try to avoid districts getting right up against that limit. And so when you hit an 80% threshold, they require you to be in engineering and funding to start looking at your next expansion. And as I interpret the letter that came in tonight, there's some belief with the sand district that this project could push it over 80, but it may only go to 81 or 82 or whatever. There's no suggestion that it is going to 110. And so we'll work with them and try to learn more and get the numbers behind it. But it's basically a goalpost issue. It's not that they're over capacity today, or they would be even with this connected, as far as I understand it.
All right. Do you want to stop sharing your screen so I can go back to my?
I guess.
Take note.
You're hijacked.
How'd you like that?
I'm not sharing the right one. But okay, I want to bring you guys back to my, oh good, I am doing the right one. Bonnie, how do I get it so it shows the whole screen? So what I wanted to talk with you guys about with regard to our outstanding issues, one of them has been resolved now. We have the detail from Redstone Water and Sand. And I had suggested that that'll be okay. I think one of them was to suggest that we have kind of a conceptual idea where we're going with that issue before we go to BOCC. So I think we now have a conceptual idea of kind of the water and sand issues. But what I want to focus your guys' attention on is this area right up in here of their plan. And as Glenn pointed out, this is the T-bar. But so Jeffrey was on the site visit with us, and while we were on site, I was talking a lot with Jason James of DHM about the ability to kind of really get in there and tweak the locations of these cabins and cottages to better set them within the hillside. And also there are some really amazing ponderosas on this property. And what I refer to often in the memo as specimen trees. So a lot of the outstanding issues have to deal with this area up in here. And so we've asked for a survey of the specimen trees on the barn parcel C. And then we wanted to see this survey kind of overlaid with the locations of the cabins and cottages. But also required fire mitigation is going to affect that at all also as well, right? Because there's, you know, periphery of no vegetation around any structure that you have. There's also a lot of grading that's going to happen with these cabins. With the roadways are minimal, and Stefan intends to use buggies or golf carts. I say golf carts, I know that's it. But, you know, for the residents, to the guests to travel back and forth. But there's going to be a lot of grading on this property in a pretty heavily forested area of the property. The best is that it's not impacting our historic easements or the historic resources, but we also have a scenic view impact issue that we need to consider. And during our site visits, Will Odie was running around up there with a 28-foot story pole up in the trees and everything. And from the highway, you really are not going to see the new development unless we lose a lot of trees for the new development. So we need to understand that a little bit better. And so, you know, tree preservation, location of the cabins within this tree survey, and you know, the opportunity to study that a little bit better with the heavy grading. So where that got us to, Josh Rice, our planning engineer, and I looked really hard at this, and our initial thought is that the top two cabins up at the top with the road that goes up to it are kind of this perfect storm, so to speak. You have this alluvial fan, which is a really unstable foundation. You have all these specimen trees. You have each one of these cabins is going to have a crawl space in it for the mechanical. And then right at the top is where you have a head wall that's being proposed by the civil engineering that's going to collect all this clear water flow that's coming down from these gullies. Now, the civil planning is that the debris mitigation fencing up above is going to catch all the debris that comes down, and then everything's going to be a clear flow into the culvert. But this area right in here, right here is this area that we'd like the applicant to restudy the location of these cabins. For the specimen trees, the head wall is gonna be right here. The debris flow fence is up in here. And also to get in there, you will start, either you're gonna have to have some really big retaining walls behind these cabins, or you're gonna have to be chasing grade to get the cabins in there. And you're starting to get into 30% slopes and steeper. I was a little late coming down here today because I was talking with Susanna Reed about the T-bar line. Susanna is not recommending that the T-bar and the apparatus of the T-bar is historically designated. She doesn't think it's really qualifies. But I wanted to ask her feeling about if the cabins were to be relocated somewhere in this open area here, and what she felt about that with the T-bar, because I don't want to be requesting something that isn't going to sit well with historic preservation. So that's why we're asking for that to be restudied. I think we've also requested a revegetation plan there wasn't one in the application, so we'd like to see a revegetation plan, and as well for this head wall and all the channeling that's gonna have to happen for the clear water flow, and then more detail on the debris, flow fencing. And then, so we're also requesting just a little bit more digging into the grading and what's happening to the natural terrain and how they're going to have to make this alluvial fan kind of support the development. So emergency access, I had minimal comments from Carbondale Rural Fire Protection District, and I've reached back out to them to ask for more referral comments. The application says that all the driveways will be 16 feet, but when Josh goes into the civil plans and looks at them, they're not 16 feet wide, which is the county driveway standard. Josh and I feel pretty strongly that you wouldn't want Redstone Castle Lane, the one that goes to the castle and the carriage house, to be 16 feet wide, because it really would compromise the historic integrity of your historic easement, right? But we'd like to see, and we're recommending maybe some pullouts along this road for emergency access purposes. And the new road, Redstone Castle Drive, which will access all the new stuff and the redeveloped accessory structures. We're also asking for some pullout lanes, pullouts to be added to this, as well as some emergency staging areas. We've reached, I have circled back with Carbondale Rural Fire and asked them if they could help us out with a little bit better locating of what they would like to see and how many pullouts and how many staging areas. The application also talks about Lover's Lane and you guys who are part of the P&Z previously, I guess there was a lot of discussion on Lover's Lane, which goes across the property, was as the previous approval was going to be a driveway accessing up to the castle. That's now kind of pegged as your secondary emergency access. It's not wide enough to accommodate a vehicle. Which I understand that was kind of the conclusion in 2018 that everybody came to, that, you know, in the event of an emergency, you're going to be running out and you're it dead ends at a private property, but you're going to be able to keep going. It's not clear to me or Josh in the application whether there are improvements proposed to Lover's Lane for some level of emergency vehicle access. And it wasn't clear in the Carbondale Fire District comment. So I'm just asking for more detail about that as well. Let's see. We talked about a better definition of a wellness center, but I guess we and staff can talk about the question of whether we need a definition of wellness center. There were quite a few comments from the adjacent neighbor about the 0.9 miles to get to the gate, and how it's a pretty rough entrance there that's pretty constrained because the driveway is right next to the river. The road obviously hasn't really been maintained. There's been small debris, sloughing that's been pushed into the pullout areas. There's the signage based upon the 2018 approval. But I think we'd like to see a better refurbishment plan for this access. You're going to need that for construction vehicles to begin with anyway. And we got our conceptual solution. Based upon Susanna Reed's comments, as well as some of the neighbors, I think we need to really pin down our tour schedule, what it means. how many? What does that look like? And then the inventory and identification of items that are in there. And I think, Susanna Reed's, referral comments to us, that are in your packet, kind of give a good explanation about what she's looking for in that. So,
And if I may, conceptually, we agree with Susanna Reed. For me, it's a question on where do you put your energy, right? So we have an inventory list of all the furniture, and it reads, and I think you've reviewed that because it was part of the previous application, believed to be from the era of, all right? So I had a quote, it's a couple of 100,000 for expert to come and say, my question is it really necessary at this stage? Because can't we just agree in principle about what the rule of preservation will look like? Because I don't want to start hiring an interior designer telling me how the room is going to look like if later they're going to say, well, you can't do your wellness center, right? Then I'm just going to have to do weddings because apparently that's, you understand where I'm coming from. So we don't have a problem in providing. It's a question of when is it the best time to spend the money and the energy? So that would be my comment. The rest, I think, the location of the cabin, we've already addressed it. We're doing a tree review today, I think.
Yeah, I can comment on that. We already have a survey crew out there today after receiving the SAP memo, locating the specimen trees, these beautiful ponderosas. We're gonna study cabins A3 and A4, where they've already been studied, and we believe they're in the right location in relationship to the head wall, and also in relationship to the specimen trees, but we're going to study that. And that may include the possibility of relocating those cabins if we feel it's necessary. With respect to the Lover's Lane egress, it's not an access. It's simply an egress in the event of some major emergency, a fire or something, for people to walk down this old road, which is very narrow, to get to the Redstone Ranch Acres subdivision. And there is no easement through one property that is between the end of Lover's Lane and the Redstone Castle property and the public road. And when we went through this review in 2018, we figured, well, if there was an emergency and people had to walk out that way because of a fire, they would probably just go across that private property to get out. And that was adequate at that time, but it's not an access. It's just an emergency egress with no legal right to cross that property. So with that, those few comments, let me say, we will address the issues and concerns that were raised by the Leslie and the Community Development Department staff. The thing that most concerns us is the timing and what it's going to take to get back to you. We want to complete this work just in the next few weeks as soon as possible, and would like to present information in a written form to Leslie so that she has time to review it and write a memo and be back before you in January. That's what we're hoping.
So real quick, I didn't make the site review. There's access to the south, there's a subdivision to the south. And but it's not on whatever that road is called where the gate is, Redstone Boulevard, Redstone Road or something.
To the south towards Marble, there's a small subdivision with a road. And there's a gate.
River and existing road.
Yeah, there's an old road between the river and the castle property that leads to Redstone Ranch Acres. They were linked at the time. I don't even know whether Highway 133 was there. Maybe it was railroad or something. But you can get to Redstone Ranch Acres that way by walking.
Well, but it's not, the Redstone Ranch Acres doesn't have access, there's not an easement, you said.
No, there's an intervening private property with a house between the public road and Redstone Ranch.
Where is the
Acres.
access? How does the house access their property?
Oh,
There's a
they have
public
drive
road
to. There's a public road.
From the south, another.
From the south?
Yes, from the
Yes.
south road. Yeah, and you know, the one thing would be great, you know, if before the big snows come, if we could get you out there, you know, the planning commission to look at this, we would welcome that. I think it would help for everyone to see what's going on there, to see the condition of the access road coming in, the location of the old bridge that served the property years ago. And just to see what's out there. It's such an important property. We would welcome the planning and zoning commission to go on a site visit, and we'd be happy to lead that if you'd like.
And I would add to that comment that the location of the cabin where we currently propose it to be, looks a little bit like a junkyard right now. And some of the excessive grading is actually made by physical disturbance of man-made disturbance. So by positioning here, we were hoping that we would achieve clustering, which is better for wildlife, noise concentration, etc. We would also clean up a part of the site which is very untidy, and we would stay as far away as possible from the property of the neighbor, because I think it's important to him as well. So there's no perfect solution. We will study relocation, but I think from all the compromise we had to take, it's probably a compromise that would be quite high in the list. And as regard to the egress, the ladies that own the house have asked during the summer whether or not they could leave the gate open because they like to walk their house on Lovers Lane. So again, I think there is a goodwill. If there was a disaster, I would doubt that the people will not be able to use it as an emergency egress.
Yeah, and Glenn, as I recall, in 2018, there was some discussion about Lover's Lane, whether it was a trail or a road or the definition of that. And then I think we recommended to the BOCC, you mentioned the bridge, that they should strongly consider, upgrading or redoing the bridge for a dedicated egress from those parcels. Does that sound right?
Well, it was considered, and the issue with the bridge are twofold. Is first, there would have to be acceleration, deceleration lanes on Highway 133.
Right.
The other thing is the bridge location, the ideal spot for it is where it was years ago, would be highly impactful on the neighboring single-family residents to the north. I mean, literally, it would be right in their yard. The combination of the unsightliness of the bridge, the decel XL lanes on Highway 133, and the impact on that single-family house is what led us to the idea that we should just make upgrades to the existing extension of Redstone Boulevard to the property. And it is rough, but it has not been maintained. And we will identify what kind of maintenance should take place on that road. But this plan does feature a reduction in traffic and not these peak events and peak traffic that would have occurred if the 2018 plan is carried out. So anyway.
And that was one of the main concerns we got from the public in 2018, whether it was the Crystal River Caucus, residents, Redstone, was the amount of traffic at those one night only weddings. They have 125 people, like what the logistics of that, running that many shuttles of people back and forth, up and down 133. And that was like the big safety concern, which adding that much traffic for, a weekend every single, all summer long, and having all those vans going up and down the highway. And this plan does mitigate that. So that, as I recall, that was like a big public comment, was the safety on 133 with that amount of traffic increase.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about access, the last go round, but yeah, that was definitely, a piece of it, the concerns about the safety concerns and right, not just the actual people showing up for an event, but all of the traffic generated by setting up and taking down.
Yeah.
And preparing for that.
Yeah.
As well as then the event, I mean, we heard a lot from Crystal River Park the last time, which is the subdivision across the highway. And the noise impacts because of the cliffs that are behind them.
Yeah.
And what an event might, the noise impact on them.
Lighting that, lighting and
Lighting
evening
and
wildlife impact.
Mhm.
People still talk about Jimmy Buffett's wedding there and what it sounded like. I'm sorry. we missed it.
I just was regaled with a story about the other day. From someone who was there, that sounded debaucherous.
It's too bad we missed it.
So a lot of what I'm pointing here, outstanding items, are things that, I mean, the thing that we really want restudied is the location of cabin A3 and A4, but again, we're asking for more, more detail on the grading, but the other things are really kind of inconsistencies in the application that we found that either, when we did our site visits, we thought, okay, it was explained this way, but the application doesn't back it up or not. And, just some of them are more, like Lover's Lane, more clarification. I mean, does, I guess, like emergency personnel, do they get that Lover's Lane is not gonna be beefed up a little bit and things like that, a little bit more crossing the Ts and dotting the Is.
Okay, I mean, we're gonna turn this around as quickly as possible. What I would request is whether, we could have a date for a continued meeting in January contingent upon this information being presented to Leslie, so she has time to review it and prepare a memo. And I don't know what's available, but we sure would like to be back here. Like Stefan says, time is not his friend in terms of this.
And so for you guys, schedule wise, I mean, right now we have the joint meeting with the BOCC. Your regular dates in January would be the 2nd and the 16th, but we've already scheduled you on the 9th to have the joint meeting with the BOCC. So, and I think Leslie was thinking just timing wise to give enough time for them to get the information to her and then for her to turn around a packet, probably looking maybe at doing the 23rd instead of the 16th. But again, sort of putting it out to you all in terms of which of those, the 16th would be your regular meeting date, but, if it worked to push it to maybe the 23rd, that might work better, on staff's end. And yeah, there was some glitch in the calendar about, right, something was showing up on the 23rd, but it was the joint meeting showing up twice, which is scheduled on the 9th. So right now, you don't have any other items scheduled in January.
Well, as long as we can get a quorum, I have no problem adding it onto doing another meeting on the 23rd, or would that be the plan, or we already have a meeting on the?
You don't have anything on the 23rd right now, yeah.
23rd is better than me.
Okay. Yeah, it works. Does that work on?
Perfect. Thank you.
What about our other P's and
That's what I'm on.
Online folks.
Well, I guess we'll have to send an email out, right? And
Right.
check everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, we can find out, but I'm not sure. Chelsea, Joe, Jasmine, is the 23rd of January? Is everyone available then for a meeting?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm available. My calendar tentatively says that we have something on the 2nd, the 9th, the 16th. So you're asking for all
So you
of
would
the,
not have, no, you would not have anything on the 2nd because that's a really silly day for anybody to have a meeting. And we put the 9th as the joint meeting with the BOCC. So, again, we'd be asking for the 9th already and then asking for the 23rd. We do not have anything scheduled on the 2nd or the 16th.
got it. Yeah, okay, that's fine with me.
Good.
we've lost Joe.
Yeah, I think.
There's Joe.
Good to go.
Okay.
All right, great.
I guess the only other thing I would ask the P and Z is of my outstanding items, are there things that you think, could wait, you know, per Stefan's comment, is it, you know, the priorities? So are there things that you don't need to see on the 23rd?
So just to refresh, my take on the list was waste and water, utilities, heating for the greenhouse, roads, trail easement, we didn't discuss at all. FTs we discussed, civil grading and drainage, tree removal, public access. Those are the ones. And to Stefan's point, I would say if you can prove waste and water, if you could update the site plan, and in particular one, I think once you go for the site visit and look at the historic maps, I'm really interested in the greenhouse, where that goes, how it fits into what you had originally. I think it's in Glenwood, we all know. And so it's a question, but so I would say showstoppers would be waste and water, site planning, which includes the study, because I know once you pin those trees, you might want to move the buildings, because I know they're massive ponderosas. The third one I would say is, you have Jonathan on this team again. He's also Firewise. So he might be able to address the questions and concerns staff just articulated in this meeting that are not really in the packet around fire protection for all those units. He's your Firewise expert, so.
I've already talked to him about that. We'll incorporate that. And I've talked to him about the wildlife implications of the steel mesh fence, which is another concern.
So I would say waste and water, nail down the site plan, and
Access, did you say?
that would be the fourth. And those would be, if you said you hit those four, because you're gonna get the same questions you get at the OCC. So I'd say if you got your site plan down, and you got your health safety issues, which is how do I, you know, and if Roaring Fork Rural is not playing ball or Carbondale, then bring in Jonathan and just say this is, meaning Lowski, this is in line with Firewise.
Right.
And we can have these homes here relative to the ponderosas and all the other stuff. You're gonna end up being all sprinkled, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Don't tell Roaring Fork Rural, or don't tell the sand department, but you have to meet NFPA requirements to build these anyway. So, and I'm sorry, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, but I would say if you have those four, the rest, you're still gonna have to dot the i's at BOCC.
And the way we had positioned the cabin in the current application, we had built for flexibility for moving there. I mean, I'm a big lover of nature. If you have a 250-year-old specimen tree, I don't want to get rid of it, right? So we can have the tree mapping and.
And I think just to the point about the definition of a wellness center and whether that, again, I think it helps everyone who's gonna look at this VLP master plan to have it specifically defined as it's gonna tie into this property. I think it's gonna give people a better comfort level of what's going on, as opposed to if we start to throw in the 10 or 12 different uses you said that might get us there. You know, again, we throw in medical clinic, that's gonna raise, you know, red flags for people. So I feel like this is a good approach, is to create the definition. And it may apply other places in the future. For now, the only place it would live is the VLP zone district.
And you can say we've got it with P and Z, and we've gone through the other 12 definitions. There isn't one. I mean, so I've literally, like, you can boldface the 12 definitions you could take in order to create this one.
So that,
So I think
the
that'll help you
benefit
go
to
through.
putting it in one place.
Yeah.
Good point.
And I can send you the 12 definitions.
Please do. Since I know you already have.
I already have.
Might as well extend.
Any other commissioner comments?
I guess I have one question since we're on the subject of wellness center. There an existing liquor license that is carrying over from the previous owner to the new owner, or is there a liquor license on site presently?
Yeah, we do have one. You know, our view of wellness or longevity is it doesn't need to be ultra restrictive. I think you can, you know, we have a big social aspect to our wellness retreat. I think if you go to Europe and you've probably been to those health center, you feel like you're in a hospital for a week. If you go to the one in California, you feel like you're in a Boy Scout type of, camp. I think that here you still want to socialize, and if somebody wants to have a glass of wine, but it is not, again, the primary use, but I think it's important to have one. So we have a liquor license currently. We are not using it, but we would like to retain the right to serve alcohol if possible.
Jimmy Buffett's smiling down on you.
Well.
Thanks.
All right, anything else? We know what we need for the next meeting. We have that on the docket, and we'll get you guys back in January.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you just, well, yeah, to think
We
about.
need to.
I would make a motion to continue the RC Ownership LLC Redstone Castle First Amendment to the Redstone Castle Village Lodge Preservation Master Plan Growth Management Exemption for on-site employee dwelling units, activity envelope and site plan review, land use code text amendments, subdivision exemption for a lot line adjustment, special view agricultural structure, and exemption for a greenhouse, Leslie Lamont, to either January 16th or January 23rd, 2024. I would then also make a motion to adjourn CATA.
What?
Latin, baby, until next year.
Oh.
We have a second? Second.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Later.
We're adjourned. All those in favor for a continuance and adjournment, raise your hand. Joe, we got everybody. Yep.
Okay.
There we go.
Good.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Good night.
I'll see you guys on
Team.
for Mr. Bob's votes.
So we're not done for the year.
That's up the year, we were talking about January.
So that's CTA.
That's right.
CATA. This is not the end of the year. When they adjourn the legislative session